On this episode of the InsurTech Geek podcast, talking about building an InsurTech ecosystem with Stacey Brown from InsurTech Hartfor. The InsurTech Geek podcast, powered by JB Knowledge, is all about technology that's transforming and disrupting the insurance world. We'll be interviewing guests and doing deep dives into specific tech we see changing the industry. We're taking you on a journey through insurance tech, so enjoy the ride and geek out. And we are back with another episode with my illustrious co-host, the most interesting man in insurance, Rob Galbraith. What's going on, Rob?
Hey, not too much, James. Just thrilled to be here. Summer's coming and excited for our guest today.
Absolutely. We're gonna have a good guest, a good conversation, good discussion around InsurTech and the ecosystem. Rob, of course, in San Antonio, Texas, yours truly in beautiful Aggie land. That's Bryan College Station, Texas, hanging out here at headquarters. And with us today, I believe you're in Hartford, Connecticut, aren't you?
Yeah, but I never heard anybody say it like that before.
I know. I just like saying it like somebody from Boston talking about packing the car in the yard, even though no one would ever say it that way. From Hartford, Connecticut, with Chester Willingham III. No, Stacey Brown from Hartford, Connecticut, InsurTech Hartfor. Glad to have you on today, Stacey. I've been wanting to have you on this thing for a while, man.
Thanks, James. I'm glad we finally made it happen. I've been wanting to connect with you as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Doing some cool things over there that I'm pretty geeked out to talk about. Your current title and company, you're founder of InsurTech Hartfor. That's InsurTech, InsurTech, InsurTechHartfor.com. You guys have a bunch of really cool events and social media, and the InsurTech movement has kind of spread like wildfire. I just recently got to go to an InsurTech Chicago event while I was in Chicago for the Reuters event. And yes, which was super fun. And I'll be at the Reuters event again in June and the Reuters event again in Austin in September. So looks like I'll be a frequent flyer this year at the Reuters insurance conferences, but got to hang out there, see some really cool stuff, meet some cool people, talk about cool topics. But InsurTech's more than that. But before we get to that, we're going to talk about you. Let's just talk about your background. Where were you born and raised, and what did you dream of doing when you were a kid?
Well, I've lived in Connecticut my whole life. I moved around Fairfield County growing up, and ultimately wound up in Bridgeport, Connecticut, which is back in the day was kind of a rough neighborhood to be growing up in. But it's also known as the Park City because there's a lot of parks, and it's along the Long Island Sound, so there's beaches and stuff. So it was a nice area. Had its nice areas, I should say. And after that, I just kind of started moving around. I lived in the New Haven area for a long time, and that's when I got into insurance. And so I was commuting from Hartford to Hartford from the New Haven area. And I said, you know what, I think it's time to move closer to Hartford, as I'm probably going to be doing this for a while. And now I live in a town called Colchester. It's about 30 minutes from Hartford. And now who goes to the office anymore? So that was a little bit of my fast forward through my life story.
Yeah, evidently no one goes in the office anymore because commercial real estate's in the process of absolutely collapsing. So we'll see.
Like we couldn't see that coming, right?
I know, right? That and parking garages and everything else that Peter Diamandis originally projected would go away and be relics of the past, and they are quickly becoming relics of the past. More quickly than we thought they would, because COVID kind of proved everything could be remote. And there's a lot of companies that are reshaping their thoughts around that. You have went through a business education, right? And you ended up back in my day, and you and I are around the same vintage, the same je ne sais quoi, the grapes are very good when we were born. And
it was a good year. Yeah,
it was a good year. It was a good year to be born. So you were chief technology officer of Eggheads and Entrepreneurs. You're a web consultant at SoftQuest. You did director of surety system at Travelers. So you actually geeked out on some technology stuff for a couple of years, and then you got into insurance. Like, what was the parlay through tech and into insurance?
Actually, backing up even from that. So and so I didn't know you want to get this personal.
Dude.
I didn't go to high school. I'm sorry. I went to high school. I didn't go to college after high school. I thought, you know what? There's no way I want to have one of those corporate job things, and I'm going to go be an entrepreneur. And my dad was in the gas station business, and he said, "Come work for me. I'll get you set up in with your own store, and life will be good." And after a few years of that, I realized, no, life wasn't going to be good, and at least not in the family business. So then I started bopping around. I did a bunch of retail jobs. I worked in restaurants. I was really, sitting there in my early 20s thinking like, oh man, why didn't I go back to school? So when eventually I did, and I was working full time. I got married young. I had 2 kids, and I decided, you know what, I'm gonna go back to school. And so I started college at age 24 or 25, something like that, where again, like I said, I was already married. I had 2 kids. I was working this retail job. And I'll just never forget the moment. You have these moments when you look back at your life and like that was one of those forks in the road moments, and like you had this epiphany, and things started moving from there. And I was sitting there in this in the warehouse of this large store. It was called Caldor. Caldor went out of business, and then it was after that I got my first ever IT job. But anyway, Caldor was like Target, right? Like Target is today. In fact, when the Caldors went out of business, a lot of the retail locations turned into Targets. But anyway, I'm sitting there at 6 o'clock in the morning. I had closed the night before. It was Christmas season, and we're looking for a box of boots to put up into the shoe department. And this guy's like, I know it came off the truck. It got delivered. It's here somewhere. And then he looks up and he's in the warehouse. He says, "Oh, I see it." So it's like 6:15 in the morning. This guy's like 45 years old, and he's climbing the shelving in the warehouse, right? He's not even using a ladder. He's just like scaling it. And he's hanging on by one arm while he's beating this box of boots with the other arm. And he's like, "Watch out below." And as I'm standing there looking up at him, I just thought to myself, you know what? When I'm his age, I just don't want that to be me. And that was what made me say, that's it. I'm going back to school, and I started, but it was tough because I was working full time in retail, which had me working all kinds of odd hours, trying to go to school for at least 4 classes a semester. And I had a wife who wasn't working because she was raising our 2 kids. And it was just really, really stressful times. But then when Caldor went out of business, I lost my job. And I was like, what am I going to do? And that's when I found Eggheads and Entrepreneurs. I got very lucky because that was in the late 90s, right? And it was like the .com boom was underway. And if you knew how to code, you can get a job. And I was the guy walking around with a sign that basically said, "We'll code for food," right? I wanted to start my own web development firm. So I walked into this shop and I told them a story. I was like, yeah, I'm thinking about building a website, right? And I wound up spending like the afternoon there, and the 2 founders of the company, got to talking to me, and they said, you know what, we'll give you a shot, because at that point I didn't have a college degree, I didn't have any background at all in any IT related stuff, but I had this huge passion for it because what I forgot to mention is part of my background was I started building commercial applications in software when I was about 12 years old, using basic computer programming language on an IBM PC. So actually, even before that, I started with my Commodore 64, right? So I always had this like tech thing going.
Same path I had, brother.
No kidding, yeah.
Yeah, GW Basic on a Trash 80. I had, yeah.
GW Basic, you got it. So that was that. So that was always in me, and what I wanted to do when I grew up was be a computer programmer, right? And so that's why I went back to school for computer science, and I had it set that I wanted to be a computer programmer. That's what we called it back in the day. There wasn't a software engineer, it was I was going to be a computer programmer. So I got to eventually, live that dream, and I got that first job with Eggheads and Entrepreneurs. I quickly became the chief technology officer because it was a small shop, and it was a startup, and we did a lot of cool web work. And I taught myself everything I needed to know: the JavaScript, the HTML. This was back in the day when I started. You did all this stuff by hand. There was no, WYSIWYG editors and stuff like that. You had to write the code if you wanted it to work. And I was, I guess, proficient enough that they put me in charge. And that's how I kind of got into IT.
You got to watch out for that,
Yeah, the Peter principle, right? You know, and and then the dot-com bust happened. I got another job, and 3 months after that, 9/11 happened, so I got laid off from that. So 2001 was a hard year. It was like I basically, my wife was pregnant. I had bought a house. I got laid off twice. I totaled my car in an accident, and then 9/11 happened. Just like, it was a very stressful year for me, but I just kept chugging along, man, and I managed to get my first ever IT job, despite of all that, and I'm sorry, my first ever insurance job. That's when 2001 I started working for Travelers, and it's just it's where I've been ever since, insurance technology. And I was at Travelers for several years. Jumped on the bandwagon with a bunch of friends who had left Excel or left Travelers to join Excel, and eventually I made the leap too. And just recently wrapped up a 14-year stint with Excel, who was Excel when I started, then became Excel Catlin, and then is more commonly today known as AXA Excel.
Yeah. So you really made the rounds. Like, what about insurance geeked you out the most? Like, let's just talk about because you've dedicated your life to this. So what made you the most excited about the entire industry and your willingness to dedicate your career to it?
If you talk to 99 people in insurance, talk to 100 people in insurance, 99 will tell you, like, they didn't set out to be in insurance, right? Like, if you're an actuary and in the risk management field, maybe you pictured that insurance was in your future. But for me, haven't told you on my background, that clearly that wasn't something I was looking to do. But I needed a job, and I had a family, and I had a friend who said, Travelers is hiring, send me your resume. And that's how I got into it. I was like, what? No nights and weekends, and I get a good paycheck? Oh, and I get vacation time? I remember the first time I took 2 weeks off in a row, I was like, this is like heaven, right? What a country club life it was, working in corporate compared to what I had come from at that point. And but that's not what kept me in insurance, right? So it was a paycheck and benefits and all that good stuff that got me in insurance. But what I learned, what I found once I was in, right, I started as a software developer. I joined Travelers, and I was part of a new system build project. This was back in the day when insurers would write the code by hand, and they would build the systems themselves, because there was no software package, full stack software package that you can buy. So we built a lot of stuff from the ground up, and I was loving it. And what I found was that insurance was actually a tech and data industry, right? And I think a lot of people picture insurance, they think about the insurance sales guy, probably middle-aged, probably white, probably male, walking around with probably a blue suit on, and trying to tell them all the reasons that they need insurance. And that's not what I found when I entered the industry. I found really smart people that love technology. I found a world of data that we can work with, and that's what really made me fall in love with it. Not to mention the fact that once I realized what insurance did as a function in society in terms of creating protection for the world to take risk and the world to advance, that just put things to even yet another level. Not only did I love what I was doing, I loved why I was able to do it.
Rob, I know you probably had similar feelings.
Yeah, no, thank you so much for sharing your personal story and journey, Stacey. It's really inspiring, and I hope it is for our listeners as well. So I want to talk to you a little bit about how you started InsurTech Hartfor, and kind of explain to our audience, what the organization is and how it's grown. But I have to this isn't even a humble brag. I'm gonna have to do the brag first. So I'm showcasing my Making Waves Awards. So the InsurTech Hartfor folks had their annual symposium a couple of weeks ago as we're recording this, and it's just grown substantially. This year was at the Mohegan Sun, and so I was one of 12 honorees. So I really appreciate everything that InsurTech Hartfor did for me personally, and I know all the fellow recipients were honored as well. So now enough about me. Tell us about InsurTech Hartfor. How did you get started? I know you had some very humble beginnings, and it actually speaks to me about the amazing insurance community of Hartford, and how has it grown, and where are you at today with the organization?
Well, I didn't set out to build anything. I was looking to be a part of something, and found that nothing that I was looking for existed. I was seeing, so I was Excel. I was working on digital strategy, as we called it at the time, and trying to figure out, there's all this noise in the industry about how investors were putting money into startups, with and all this new tech was going to disrupt and all this stuff. And I saw that, and I said, hey, you know what? This reminds me of those .com days, right? Which is, I told you about that background, how I kind of even got into IT, et cetera. And I'm like, I want to be a part of this somehow. And I started talking to people, because I'd been in the industry about 15 years at that point. And I started talking to people that I knew around Hartford. And I'm like, do you see anything like this? And people are like, no, it's Hartford. We don't do that here. And I'm like, but it's Hartford, and we should do that here, because there's a ton of insurance, and here's something threatening our industry. Why don't we get involved? And I didn't know what it meant. And all I said was, I'm going to try and put a meeting together. And I set out to look for a location. And that was a little tough, because like every restaurant in town wanted like $1,000 plus, this, what looked to me like a very expensive catering menu that you had to buy in bulk from. And I'm like, I don't know if anybody's even going to show up, right? I don't want to put like all that at risk. And I got lucky, because I got introduced to the founder of Upward Hartford, which was a co-working space that we had that at the time wasn't even open yet. They were planning. And I remember talking to the founder, and she was like, well, what do you need? I'm like, well, I need space. She's like, well, I've got space. What else do you need? And it was kind of like a match made in heaven thing, because she wanted to bring people into her co-working center. She loved the idea of startups being there. She loved the idea of corporates being there. And me, I love the idea of having a place, especially one that, at least initially, I didn't even have to pay for. So we both got something out of it that we wanted, and that was kind of how it started. And so I just was bringing people together. I was pulling out my credit card and buying pizza and carrying cases of beer down Main Street, and doing every single thing that it took to just try and bring people together and to collaborate. And then we started having hackathons, and we started getting creative with it. And that was kind of how it all started. It's just you see a lot of conferences nowadays, and especially what seems to be the common thread is overseas media companies seeing the opportunity in the United States, and just thinking they'll just pop up another conference. And
that's not only in insurance, by the way. The same thing happened in the construction sector, where I was really active. It's always the Brits, man. The Brits, they come.
I wasn't gonna call anybody.
Oh, come on! It's the Brits, and there's multiple agencies. I love them. I mean, I'm half British. I'm half British. It's what it is.
Same here, but Brown. It comes from somewhere on an island over there. But anyway, the thing is, I didn't set out to do that, right? It's not like I said, hey, I want to build a media company. I want to be in the conference business. I just wanted to talk to peers in my industry around what was going on. I wanted to stay close to it, and I wanted to see how I could contribute to it. And there were some, challenges along the way, like one of them being that I worked for one of the world's largest insurance companies, and how am I going to go out there doing this when I have this day job, right? And so kind of like the story that I told you about, I was working full time and going to school 4 classes a week while raising 2 kids when my wife wasn't employed. Like, I just kind of grew up not knowing anything less than always juggling, multiple things at once and working my butt off. So that's what I did. That's what I've done for many years. I worked hard at my corporate gig to the fullest extent that they would give me opportunity. And I, at the same time, was just interested in building community. But something happened during the pandemic, which changed everything, because it really did start out as kind of like a hobby, if you would. But then during the pandemic, it was InsurTech Hartford. It was about the community, and everything I was doing was local. But during the pandemic, we couldn't get together anymore with all of our friends, and we had to start going online. And when that happened, things just started becoming more global. Everything became more global, and our brand became global. And it's taken a while for people to realize InsurTech Hartford is not just about the four walls of the city of Hartford, right? It's actually a community that's engaged and plugged in everywhere across the globe. Really, we have friends and network from Australia, Japan, Africa, Istanbul, Israel, all throughout Europe, various parts of South America, Canada. So basically everywhere we've built this network. We run this innovation challenge every year that started as something we wanted to do with a couple carriers sponsoring some prizes to get a few local university students interested, and we'd have like a finals and awards event at the University of Hartford. We wound up doing that online, and now every year when we run it, we get applications from like 12 to 15 different countries, and it's truly become like a global thing. And the symposium was something, when we did it for the first time in 2019, was nice. We were at a Marriott. We had just under 300 people, and it was like it felt like a Goldilocks moment, where we had like just the right amount of people and just the right amount of space for just the right amount of time. And but that felt really good. We wanted to do it again, and we wound up having to do everything online during the pandemic. And in 21, we tried to launch the symposium again, and Delta variant was kicking up, and everyone was concerned about, we wanted to sign contracts and all this stuff. So we wound up booting it to 2022. So we went back and did the symposium last year, and it was pretty successful at the Connecticut Convention Center. And this year we upped the ante. We went to Mohegan Sun. We had the entire Earth Exhibit Hall to do what we wish with, and I think people really enjoyed it. And Rob, thank you for showcasing your award. We gave out, like Rob mentioned, about a dozen industry influencer awards. We call it the Making Waves Award because we realize that there's a lot of people out there kind of making waves. They're like, if the insurance industry is like a slow moving river that changes the landscape slowly over time, there's people out there that are like little speedboats on this river, and they're zipping all around us, and they're making waves. And that's why we called it the Making Waves Award. And there's a lot of people like Rob who are out there every day trying to make an impact and trying to make a difference in our industry, but not necessarily getting paid for their efforts, and not doing it because their boss told them to, but doing it because this is what their passion is, and it's what they're passionate about. And so we thought, why not take advantage of the opportunity of having all these people together to recognize them? So Rob, I'm happy that we were able to recognize you, and happy that you're happy about receiving the award. And what a long rant that was. I must be making your job real easy right now.
Yeah, you're making it real easy, Rob.
Yeah, no. So Stacey, and again, thank you so much for all that you've done. And as you've mentioned, I attended some of the virtual events and saw some of the folks from all around the world, right? So tell us, what is InsurTech Hartford today? Who are you looking to engage with? If somebody wanted to know, what services you provide, or how could you help them? Maybe they're a startup, maybe they're a corporate. Maybe you can just tell us kind of, where's InsurTech Hartford today? What are the services that you provide, and who are you looking to connect with?
Well, where we are today and where we're going is shifting, and there's some things in the works that I wish we were having this conversation like a month from now. I'd probably have some really cool stuff that I could tell you, but we've been mainly focused on bringing people together as a way to drive innovation, and i.e. events, right? But there are a couple of forces at play here. Number one, we've built this incredible network. Like I mentioned, basically it's global. And there's a lot of people that are just like me, right? They're a lot of years in the industry, a lot of experience, but probably want to find different ways to make use of their time and create value. So, we're looking at those folks as executives, let's say, that can bring a lot of value to startups, and there's startups out there that they need the help, they need the talent. So we're trying to work on some creative ways to bring those things together. So if you're a startup, if there's a startup out there that every startup out there is trying to manage cash, right? So they're all tight on cash. A lot of times it's easy to fall into the trap. I at one of the InsurTech Slopes events, I heard a founder telling this story about how in his early days of bootstrapping his company, he didn't have a lot of cash. So what he did is he hired low cost people that seemed to have high energy and high interest to learn. And about 3 of the first 10 hires actually worked out, right? So you think you're saving money, but you're losing the productivity, right? And
yes
what
and
if
no. Sometimes it's not. I mean, I was there. I was there for a long time. I bootstrapped for a long time. So you still get things done. You still limp along, but it can be challenging. You lose a lot of productivity on bad hires.
Well, that's it. So what if you can hire highly experienced executives for lower, on a fractional basis, for lower cost, right? So that's kind of along the lines of where we're going. People that have the experience, they have the networks, they have a lot of the things that startups need, right? So that's one area of opportunity that we're looking at. But also, James, you mentioned about how we met at the InsurTech Chicago event. So I've been helping get that community off the ground and get that started. I've also been working with Lisa Wardlaw on trying to get the Atlanta community going. So I'm interested in taking a lot of the lessons that I've learned about community activation and community building and start growing communities elsewhere across the U.S. And so, like I said, if it was a month from now, I'd probably have a bunch of stuff to tell you about that. But there's, that's another thing of what we're doing. And I think for insurance carriers, there's a lot of information out there, right? There's a lot of startups, there's a lot of tech, and everybody wants your time. And I think, first off, for me personally, with 20 plus years in the buy side of the industry as an insurance IT exec, I've learned a lot, and so I think I can help a lot of people with that department as well. So that's something else that we're looking at and trying to figure out how to put together. So there's a few different avenues basically going on, and of course we want to continue to have the innovation challenge. We want to continue to have the next InsurTech Hartford symposium. And keep all these networking events going across multiple communities. So there's a lot going on right now, actually.
What's the long term? Let's just kind of wrap with this. Like, what does the long term look like in the let's say 5 years from now? The InsurTech scene's evolving a lot, right? There's a huge focus on profitability, right? There's a huge focus on kind of pivoting away from a lot of the concepts people originally talked about with disintermediation, because they're like, oh wait, we still need brokers, right? So a lot of things have changed, and gravity, they found out gravity still applies. So where do you see the future of InsurTech in general going in the next few years? What do you think the big emphasis is going to be? Is it going to all be AI and chat GPT and how to use large language models? I mean, is it going to be, finally putting the bullet in the head of on-prem and mainframes? I mean, what do you think on InsurTech in general?
Well, my first answer to that would be something that I mentioned in my opening remarks at the symposium a few weeks ago, is that tech is changing everything, and it's changing fast. Tech is no longer something you need to do to differentiate. It's something you need to do to survive. If you're not adopting new tech at scale rapidly in your company, guess what? Your competitors are. And even the companies you don't consider your competitors are going to start rapidly scaling because they do. So technology is changing fast. We as an industry, all the players, whether you're on the distribution side, you're on the risk side, and capacity side, whatever it is, we all have to get used to change. So if technology is changing fast and it's not the differentiator anymore, what is? And to me, the answer to that is people, right? So we could sit here and try to pontificate about what the next, future tech is going to be. Obviously, AI is going to continue to be highly relevant, and it's going to continue to make a lot of changes. But quantum computing is, really starting to scale up, and there's a lot of government money going into the research and development of that stuff. There's manufacturing capabilities being brought back into the United States. There's a lot going on that's going to and it make the power of what we can do with data even more advanced than we can fathom today. So I think that trend is not just insurance, that's everything that touches our everywhere that technology touches our lives, which is basically everywhere. Like you can't even watch TV anymore without having to learn new technology, it seems, right? So I think, we will continue to see AI, and we'll continue to see a lot of change due to technology. But the big thing that's most important really is the people. And I think that's where all this community, it's why I choose to do community building right now, because I think organizations are so used to innovating within their four walls. Maybe they'll hire an external consultant to come in and help ask the hard questions that nobody wants to ask themselves internally. But we're at a point where to really be rapidly advancing and innovating and staying current with the industry, companies need to do a better job of going out into the industry to find out about it. And that's why I think this community building stuff is hot, and I'm going to continue focusing on it.
Yeah, I mean, so much.
There's a whole culture side as well, James. The whole culture side to this InsurTech movement, right? It's not just the tech part.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's a huge amount of value to just bringing people together that have like-minded, have similar interests, and have similar goals, and are change focused and oriented. It's part of a movement I was heavily involved with in the construction tech context space for 12 years. And we did something very similar. We created regional events, and we had, content crew events for 5 years. And I've been down that road, and it was amazing to watch all the companies that were started out of that, and all the executives that became executives at big construction companies out of that. So, I've seen the playbook, I've watched it happen before. It really is amazing how community and connecting people and sharing ideas turns into, real lasting transformative change. So I'm just excited to watch you and to be a small fly on the wall while you've been building this really cool community. I'm excited to see InsurTech's spread. I think it'd be really cool to have them in every major city in the United States. InsurTech LA, InsurTech San Francisco, InsurTech Houston, and definitely InsurTech Miami, InsurTech Fort Myers. When you look at where the insurance companies are, you're going to have to be in Florida. So, it's I think it'll be neat to see it spread and grow and turn into something really, continue to be something that's really relevant. That's really pushing the needle forward.
That's awesome to hear.
Yeah.
What do you think, Rob?
Yeah, no, I was just going to say what I love about your organization, Stacey, is it's truly grassroots, right? And I know a lot of other folks have tried to start incubators and accelerators and other stuff, and that's great, right? But oftentimes it is at the direction of one single corporation. They're trying to share, and maybe they're trying to get partners. But what I love about, and I think is somewhat unique about InsurTech Hartford, is that grassroots nature, right? Of just, it's an amazing community for those that have never been to Hartford. I've just met so many other folks. So there's many other folks. Stacey, you're the face of it, and definitely the driving force, but I know you've had a ton of helping hands along the way in various forms. And so to see you try to figure out, how do we do that in Chicago? How do we do that in Atlanta? How do we replicate this very grassroots movement? So in a very corporate world of insurance and technology, having this, activism, as you talk about, right, this grassroots, I think it's actually in a kind of an incredible story, one that you wouldn't really expect. So congrats on all your success.
Thank you, Rob.
Awesome. Well, look, Stacey, it's been good to have you on and good to hear about what's going on with InsurTech, what the history has been, how you got there, where you're going, where it's going to spread to. certainly Rob and I are excited to attend an event in the future and continue to engage. So thank you so much for being on the show. Thanks for talking about this, and thanks for what you're doing. Again, just tell everybody where they can find out more information on InsurTech.
Well, InsurTechHartfor.com is a great place to start.
Awesome. And there you have it. Go hit that up, and then certainly hit up Stacey on LinkedIn. He'll be happy to engage with you. Stacey, thanks for all your hard work. Appreciate it. Having been there, done that, and know how hard it is. I really appreciate all your hard work on this and what you're doing to just, obviously not just change companies, but change the industry.
Thanks, James.
Okay. Thanks, guys. We'll see you later.
Bye-bye.
And that's going to be a wrap for our current episode of the InsurTech Geek podcast. This has been our interview with Stacey Brown from InsurTech Hartfor. We'll geek out with you next time. Thanks. The InsurTech Geek podcast, powered by JB Knowledge, jbknowledge.com. It's all about technology that's transforming and disrupting the insurance world. I've been your host, James Benham. That's jamesbenham.com, with co-host Rob Galbraith at endofinsurance.com. And thank you for joining us today. Look forward to talking with you soon. We're taking you on a journey through insurance tech. So enjoy the ride and geek out.